Nicole here. Thank you so much for joining me. And I want to do a little series of videos talking about, answering some questions that I've gotten from people around addiction and recovery and yoga. So if I get a question once, I normally get it many times. So I just thought that, I could answer them so you all can get the benefit. So the first one is around curiosity around sobriety. So people kind of checking the pulse of what it would be like, doing a little research, checking out the situation. So some questions, for example, were, do I have to stop forever? Can I still smoke weed? Can I just not drink or use as much? What does recovery, what does it denote? What does it mean? And first I want to start out with that your recovery, just like you, is going to be unique to you. So there's lots of different ways to do it. So traditionally, we've seen the model of it's completely none, or you're doing it all, or you're doing absolutely none, and there's nothing in between. So that is what is needed for a lot of people to live a lucid and manageable life, and I'm one of those people. I am incredibly severe alcoholic and addict. I can't play around in the maybe zone. And a lot of people can't play around in that maybe zone. And I want to just mention what the maybe zone is like, maybe you've tried some of these before. I tried them all before I realized that none of them were working. So maybe I could only drink on the weekends. Maybe I wouldn't drink hard liquor anymore and I would just drink wine and beer. Maybe it would work if I only drank at nights, or only drank in the afternoons, or didn't drink when I first woke up. Maybe I only did drugs at parties, or when friends were in town, or on special occasions, or a few times a year. So for me, that maybe leaves all this possibility open, and my obsession kind of gets going. And that's the way that it is for a lot of people. And when we have a little bit, it just tanks. So I'm a quick tanker. I go down real fast. But not everybody's like that. A lot of people have really, really good luck at harm reduction. Especially, like, for an example, you can really think about that around heroin addicts. There's controversy around whether heroin addicts should use methadone or Suboxone, which is essentially a synthetic form of heroin, but it lets them live manageably and it doesn't get you high. It's a whole different topic, but there's controversy over whether that's still using. Like, are you really sober? Or the same with people who use, maybe they quit drinking, but they're still using antidepressants. What everybody is so different. Our physiology, our biology, our genetics, and our life experience. So all of these components are like a Mod Podge of creating what works and what doesn't work for us. So explore and investigate. I investigated personally every single way that I could to find a way to continue to drink, and not for me. Not for me. But does that mean somebody who maybe they just wanting to cut back on their drinking and they have more of a much more of a handle on it? Like, I think absolutely, try it on for size. You don't have to be a full-blown alcoholic to want to cut back on your drinking and to realize that maybe it's not as nourishing as it used to seem. you know? So I think that people who, I'm kind of going round and round here, but I think that, people who are really hardcore in their addiction, we have a lot of denial, but eventually it's like, we know, deep down we know. I think it's really hard, and it can be hard in a different way for the people who aren't really sure. They don't identify with maybe a hangover every day, or missing appointments, or calling into work. And, the unmanageability isn't apparent. And maybe it's not there. Maybe it's just making you feel less present, and you want to be more present. That is a good enough reason for you to either quit or cut back and investigate what's going on. So there's a whole spectrum here. And I think that the biggest question is, what is nourishing you and what is draining you? So really getting honest and taking a good look at that. Like, what is the drinking or the using or whatever it's doing? What is it giving you? And what is it taking from you? And sit with that for a while. So there may be lots of ways that we, as more of this end of the spectrum, addict or alcoholic, the ways that we delude ourselves and we deny what's really going on. Like, I'm not hurting anyone but me. And, those other times we're just out of control and I'm going to get it figured out. And all of these different things that we don't want to actually look and say, oh, this is ruining my life. So that's one thing, having to really finally get honest with that. But then sometimes it's more insidious and more harder to see what's going on when it's not so boom, slap in your face. Like, you don't have coworkers and parents and a lot of people telling you like, oh, this is, supporting you and seeing that there's an issue. Because even though your friends might not see it, or your coworkers or your family, and they just think you're a good time, if you are feeling not present, if you are feeling like it's taking from you, if you're just over it anymore, you don't have to have a problem to anyone else's eyes to want to cut back or to quit. And I'm speaking to these two different, I don't know if you can see these two different people that I'm speaking to here, but a lot of people, I work with a lot of people who, they don't identify with the way that they have seen an alcoholic in their lives. Like, I was the alcoholic, I was like the caricature, especially towards the end. So people see me, or I tell my story, or they saw me, and that makes them not look like they have a problem, if that makes sense. Often people in this group as well, they may have a very hardcore addict or alcoholic in their parameter. Family member, lover, something like this, that may be the tornado. So then it dampens down that maybe there's something going on here as well. So it's the self-inquiry, which is just, I think, the most valuable thing that we can do, is to get to know ourselves in an honest way, and to get to know our sensations and our feelings and what is going on inside. That honesty and that relationship is going to help you filter through what's happening. So again, coming back to the inquiry of what is it giving you and what is it taking? And only you can answer that. Alcohol is not inherently bad. It's how we use it. That's a big statement. But it's not inherently bad. It's how we use it. It's the intention behind it. How are you using it to run, to hide? How is it harming you? How is it harming those around you? Are you using it for salve in social situations, to try to connect, to try to repress is a big one, not to feel? So that's another question. How are you using it? What is the intention behind it? Let me look at some of my notes here. So, big honesty. And a thing that I really, for the two different groups of people here. So for the sober curious, you can always go back. You know what your life is like right now. And this is for everyone, actually, in both camps. You know what's happening right now. You know what it's like. So you're an expert in your experience. What you haven't tried yet is something different. So I implore you to give it a go for 30 days. And, if there's really not an issue, that shouldn't be that big of a problem, right? So that's one kind of barometer. Like, how hard would it be to go 30 days without your substance of choice? So maybe try that on. You can always go back. You know what it's like here. You can always go back. And then now to this camp, to my camp, I want to ask you, when there's an issue, but you don't always want to admit it, and you think that maybe you will have it figured out next time, or that you've concocted this plan of how you're going to do it better next time, like how you're going to win this game. That's what I was obsessed with, is how is I going to make this work? The fact, especially if you've had some dire consequences in your drinking and your using or whatever. So the fact that you're even risking it, that you're even pondering and thinking about going back to something that has caused you serious consequences, shows that there's an issue. Because people who are real lucid and real clear, whenever you stick your hand in the fire, you get burnt, you don't put your hand back in. So one definition of addiction is, that's actually the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. So insanity and addiction go really close together. So that's something to think about. So if you find yourself obsessing and trying to, MacGyver ways to make it work, and maybe this will work, and then convincing yourself that, I think I'm fine. I think I'm fine. I think I'm going to go again. I think I'm going to put my hand in the fire again. I think it's a good idea. Just the fact that you're pondering how to put your hand back in the fire is a red flag. So think about that. Let's see some other things. So I talked about nourishing and feeding. So in terms of also thinking about the nourishing and feeding, think about the energy that you put in to your drinking and your using. Do you have to hide? Do you have to lie about it? Do you have to make excuses? What kind of energy do you have to put into this? Hangovers, time lost, presence lost, not remembering, arguments, losing your car. Think about the energy factor here. Yeah? Kind of like a pros and cons list. And then your intention. And I mentioned that again. So just going back to intention. Why am I doing it? Is it casual? Could you take it or leave it? Do you always have to have it in social situations? Do you go to parties where there wouldn't be alcohol? Do you go places without knowing when you'll have your next drink or not? That's something I wouldn't do. I wouldn't go anywhere. I had to have it mapped in my mind all day of when I knew I could get more. Or I had to have it with me. Like me not knowing when I would have my next drink, major panic mode. Something to think about. Something I haven't touched on that sober curious people might be asking about is, I don't have to drink all the time. Is that you? I don't have to drink all the time. I only drink every now and again, but then your drinking goes out of control whenever you do drink. So is anyone out there relate to that? That's the binge drinker. Binge drinking is really challenging because when you're not drinking, you may drink once a month, but it's a disaster when you do. But during that whole time when you're not drinking, you can convince yourself that you don't have an issue. There's no issue here. But there is a big issue because then like a bomb goes off. Yeah. So that's another really slippery slope of how we can delude ourselves. So it's kind of identifying what kind of camp you think you're in, because they're all a little bit different and they all have their own slippery slopes and insidious tactics. So let me know in the comments like what kind of where you're at, so I know know. It'd be interesting to know where everybody is and if we have more of one kind or more of another. But, your sobriety is ultimately going to be yours. Your recovery is going to be yours, and no one can tell you how to do it because no one's judging you. No one's grading you on this. You don't get like a pass or fail other than you. Like you get to live or die for some of us. That's the judge for some of us. Like that's the governing board, life or death. Or you get to live a life that you're really present in, or one that you have blacked out some. Or one that maybe you're just not as connected as you should be when you're spending time with your family or people that you love. It's different for everyone. You make the scale. Is this nourishing you? Is it draining you? What is your intention with using? How much are you putting into it? Some things to think about. So I challenge you to take a journal out and to think about those questions. And get really honest. Notice making excuses and rationalizing, because that comes up. Like one part of us will say this and then the other part will say, well, so notice the different voices in your mind, kind of like the angel and the devil is what it feels like. So let me know what comes up. I'm really curious to know. And also, so I'm running an online recovery course called Emerge, and it's an 8-week in-depth self-inquiry course, and we do it as a group, and it's super beautiful, and we go really, really deep. And it's going to be good. So I have another one of those coming up. I'll be running them every few months, or probably just twice a year, but just head over to my website if you're interested in that. And, like I mentioned in the beginning, you can always go back. You know what it's like right now. If it's not an issue, then give it 30 days. Have a sober month and see what's underneath that. So let me know. I'm looking forward to hearing, and ask me any other questions you have, and I'll start doing these kind of little chats. So thanks.